Messianic prophecies. Okay, what is that? A messianic prophecy is a prediction relating to the Messiah. And the Messiah was the expected deliverer for the Jewish people. Well, Jesus is a man from history who fulfilled hundreds of messianic prophecies. Therefore, he is regarded as Messiah by Christians. First of all, Jesus did walk on this earth 2,000 years ago. I can find lots of atheists who would agree with that. In fact, there were 17 non-Christian historians who wrote about the death of Jesus by crucifixion. Secondly, Jesus appeared on the scene hundreds of years after the prophecies were written down in the Old Testament. And we have the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were discovered in 1946, that kind of verifies that, one of the verifications. They were written down around 200 BC. That was before Jesus came on the scene. Before the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1946, the most ancient Hebrew Bible documents came from around 900 AD. And the funny part about it is the Dead Sea Scrolls were virtually identical. And they were written around 200 BC, not 900 AD. The third thing that we want to look at is, we'll assume the New Testament is reliable. We can verify this. There are thousands of manuscripts that exist for the New Testament. There are more manuscripts that exist for the New Testament than any other ancient document. The manuscripts of the New Testament are closer in age to the original than are any other ancient document, and the New Testament documents are more accurate than any other ancient document. So let's go ahead and get to the probability part. A while ago, there was a professor named Peter Stoner, and he was from Westmont College. He took 12 different classes, that's about 600 students, and he calculated probabilities of 8 messianic prophecies and published the results in a journal. So let's take a look at these 8 messianic prophecies. There they are. So these are predictions from the Old Testament: Zechariah, Micah, Malachi, Isaiah, Psalms. Those are all Old Testament books, and they had predictions about the Messiah. So there's 8 predictions here. And Jesus comes along in the New Testament, and he fulfills all 8 of these predictions. Now, there were more than 8 predictions in the Old Testament, but we're just picking 8 because that's what this study did. We're going to analyze 8 of these prophecies. The Messiah will be betrayed for 30 pieces of silver. And that's what happened to Jesus. But what they did, what the class, Peter Stoner's class did, is they asked, what is the probability that a random person fulfills that prophecy? The students came up with 1 over 10,000. Now, Dr. Stoner knew there would be skeptics critiquing the numbers, so he changed the probability. So he did that. We hate when math teachers take out the red pen and do that. He changed it to 1 over 1,000. So he made the denominator of the fraction smaller, therefore making the probability bigger or more likely. And he did this because he knew people would be critiquing these numbers. So he made a more conservative estimate of the probability. How likely would it be for you to be betrayed for 30 pieces of silver? Pretty unlikely. We had that box that had the pen caps. So here they are there. It would be the probability of closing your eyes and reaching into that box and pulling out the red pen cap. It's not very likely. And in fact, since these are conservative probabilities, the box of pen caps would have to be a lot bigger for it to represent the true probability of being betrayed for 30 pieces of silver. The next prophecy, the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem. It's hard to control where you are born. So they did distributions of the land. This is what the class did. And they estimated it to 1 over 280,000. But Stoner made that probability bigger as well. And he said it's 1 over 100,000. A messenger will prepare the way for Messiah, 1 over 1,000. Of course, that refers to John the Baptist. The Messiah will enter Jerusalem as a king riding on a donkey, 1 over 100. Messiah will be betrayed by a friend and suffer wounds in his hands, 1 over 1,000. The betrayal money will be thrown down in the house of the Lord and will go to the potter. That's very specific. And that happened, 1 over 100,000. Messiah will remain silent while he is afflicted. Usually people try to defend themselves. So the probability of that happening is 1 over 1,000. And Messiah will die having his hands and feet pierced. 1 over 10,000, that came from Psalms. And this was before crucifixion came the big deal. So that was long before we had that. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to multiply those 8 probabilities together and get 1 over a 1 followed by 28 zeros. Or we can say 1 over 10 to the 28, which has a name, 1 in 10 octillion. And this is the chance of one man fulfilling all 8 of these prophecies. Now, the total number of people who have lived since the time of these prophecies is less than 100 billion. So I'm going to multiply that probability by 100 billion, and it's actually going to make the numerator bigger. But that's going to give me the chance of any man fulfilling all 8 of these prophecies. And that's going to be 1 over 10 to the 17th, which has a name, 1 in 100 quadrillion. And that is a conservative estimate. This probability should be 1 over a bigger number than 100 quadrillion. Okay, so it should be more unlikely. Let's go see what 100 quadrillion is. So even if you're not a big fan of the Bible, you will find this interesting about the number 100 quadrillion. Suppose we take 100 quadrillion dry erase black pen caps and lay them on the face of California. We're going to assume the lakes and the rivers are dried up or frozen, and we're going to do this. It will look like that. So you notice I even put some on Catalina Island and some of those other islands. That's 100 quadrillion caps. How many caps does that happen to be? Well, these caps will cover the state 5 feet deep. Actually deeper, but we'll just say 5 feet deep. Now we're going to take one red pen cap and place it anywhere among the black pen caps. You can mix it up all you want, and then you're going to blindfold a man and tell him he must pick up just one pen cap. He can walk anywhere he wants in California before picking up one pen cap. So I can imagine this guy's he's just walking through the state of California, stopping anywhere, picks one pen cap without looking. The chance of him picking up the red cap is the same as the chance that the prophets of the Old Testament provided the 8 messianic prophecies from their own wisdom and not God's, and having them all come true in any man from their day to present time. And only 8 prophecies were chosen for this experiment. There were hundreds of fulfilled messianic prophecies. So sometimes people say, well, why are you a Christian? Is it just blind faith? Why did you pick that? It's because we have evidence. We have predictions in the Bible, and we see the predictions coming true. And that's what seals the deal for me. No other religion offers that kind of pattern, with predictions made, and then later on the predictions coming true. So let's take a look at the book of Daniel, which dates back to the 6th century BC, and it talks about 69 weeks. Those weeks translate into 173,880 days, and this chapter in the book of Daniel, chapter 9, makes a prediction about the future. Of course, it would be the future according to Daniel, not to us. And what happens is it accurately predicts when Messiah would be cut off. Messiah is the expected deliverer of the Jewish people. So this prediction, when you actually analyze it, it takes us right into something called Passion Week. And that would be this week here, March 30th, 33 AD to April 3rd, 33 AD. And what's so significant about Passion Week? That's the week when Jesus was cut off. He was crucified. And so March 30th, that's about when Jesus enters Jerusalem. And April 3rd is when he is crucified. And so this thing that was written hundreds of years before this happened, it's a prediction that takes us right to this week. It's accurate, it's precise. This is sometimes called the backbone of all prophecies. In another video, I do go into the details about Daniel's 69 weeks. Sometimes it's called Daniel's 70 weeks because there's a 70th week. So this is another example of a prophecy that is in the Bible. A prediction, and then hundreds of years later, it was right on. I'm going to go ahead and list 30 more messianic prophecies from the Old Testament. And all of those 30 messianic prophecies came true through Jesus. So, 30 prophecies. In the Old Testament, it said the Messiah will be a descendant of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob, of Judah, of Jesse, of David. He'll heal the blind and the deaf and the lame and the dumb. He'll be a teacher of parables. He'll be presented with gifts from kings. And of course, that happened at the beginning of Jesus' life. There is another prophecy in Hosea 11
out of Egypt I called my son. So before we get to the other 30, people used to be confused with this because, well, Messiah is called out of Egypt in this prophecy. And in a prophecy that we looked at before, he's born in Bethlehem. And there's another prophecy that's not going to be on this list, but Messiah would be called a Nazarene. So these are three prophecies, and the rabbis used to wonder if there would be three Messiahs because of this. And this was all, in Old Testament times, this was probably pretty confusing. Well, now that we have all the information about Jesus, it makes sense. Jesus was born in Bethlehem, then taken by his parents into Egypt to escape being murdered by Herod, lived there until God told Joseph it was okay to return to Israel. And then they went to live in Nazareth. So all three of those prophecies were accurate. He called out of Egypt, born in Bethlehem, and would be called a Nazarene. Now, the other prophecies I list on this slide will be things that happen in the last 24 hours of Jesus' life before he was crucified. He'll be forsaken by his disciples, struck, spit upon, mocked, bruised. And if you look at the Hebrew word for that, it's not just a little purple mark on your arm. It's bruised beyond recognition, wounded, numbered with the transgressors. There was a thief on each side when he was getting crucified. Garments parted and lots cast. Now, as we're looking at these, you might wonder, well, could he engineer these? Well, how can you engineer where you're born and engineer how people, your enemies, are going to gamble over things? Garments parted and lots cast. Stared upon. People shook their heads. Friends stood afar off. Suffered thirst. Gall and vinegar offered to him. Bones not broken. Now that almost didn't take place because they wanted to take all the bodies off the crosses because there was other people being crucified that day, and there were some festivals the next day. So to help them die faster, the soldiers were told to break the legs. And then, of course, that would then kill the people on the crosses. Well, when they came to Jesus, they said, well, he was already dead, so they didn't break his legs. But the thieves on both sides, that's what happened to them. Pierced, darkness over land, and all this bad stuff happened, yet he's buried in a rich man's tomb. So these are just 30 more prophecies that were made in the Old Testament about Messiah that came true with Jesus. So were these fulfilled prophecies deliberately engineered by Jesus? How could he do this? How could he engineer all of those prophecies? And the second point is it would be contrary to his character. He would be one of the greatest deceivers of all time. Now, some rabbis thought there would be two messiahs, the suffering servant to pay for our sins, which you kind of see right here. But there's other prophecies that we didn't get into in this talk here. The suffering servant, and then there's the conquering king who delivers his people from worldly oppression. Well, the deal is there's two visits, the same Messiah, one down, one to go. Christianity is the only religion to have an unbelievable track record with prophecies or with predictions. No other religion offers that. Jesus even made predictions. So I'll read from Matthew 24, verses 1 and 2. Then Jesus went out and he departed from the temple, and his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, "Do you not see all these things? Assuredly I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down." Jesus spoke this prophecy around 33 AD. Some of those stones used to build the temple were huge. How could every stone be overturned? And maybe a more important question, why would you want to overturn them all? Yet, after Jesus was crucified in 70 AD, a Roman guard threw a torch and it set the temple on fire. So there was a veil in there, and the gold around the top, I think it's called the cornice, melted into the cracks of the marble. And after it was done, you had Roman soldiers who were greedy. They wanted to get that gold, and they took every single stone and overturned them to get the gold that had melted between them. This fulfills the prophecy of Jesus. Not one stone that you would see would be left upon another. They're all thrown down. So Jesus made lots of predictions about the future, and this is another one that happened years later. There are actually predictions in the Bible that have more recently come to pass. The Bible says the Jewish people will come back to their land and their nation will be reborn. Well, in 1948, it happened against great odds, and we have the nation of Israel. Now, in the 1800s, if someone were looking at that prophecy, they would say, well, how could that be? So we have many predictions in the Bible, and we've got a very good track record. There are actually predictions in the Bible that lie in our future. So let's take a look at one of them. I don't want to turn this into like a Bible study. I really wanted to just show you the Bible has a lot of accurate predictions, and we already did an example where a professor looked at 8 of those predictions and probability. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover, but I wanted to show you that there are lots of predictions in the Bible and some that haven't happened yet, because that would be in our future. So what I'm going to show you, I don't want to like freak people out, but there is something called the Great Tribulation, which is in the future. It's mentioned in the Bible a lot. In the book of Daniel, it's also mentioned in the book of Revelation. So that's what I'm going to look at. Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 and 17. Now who is he? This is referring to the false prophet, who's the guy who's promoting the Antichrist in the Great Tribulation. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark or a passport on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name, which you could read later as 666. So I used to think that this can't happen. Well, not in America. Americans wouldn't receive a passport, a mark. They're too independent. You cannot buy, sell, enter stores, that is, without this passport, without this proof. Could never happen in this country. So presently there is not a one world leader, Antichrist. There's not. We don't have that right now as I'm speaking in April of 2021. And there is not a mandatory mark from this leader, but the Bible predicts that it will happen. So there are some predictions, not some happy ones here. The Bible is full of predictions. A lot of them that I covered already took place. And there's a lot of predictions in the Bible that will take place in the end times. So there are many more predictions we can talk about, but I'm done for this video. If you're interested in math in the Bible, check out my video. Presently it's on YouTube, but it should be somewhere out there. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Take care.